Hey everybody, it's Tim Hepworth here with Fly Fishing Bover Outfitters and Thursday Night Live Fly Tying, and I want to welcome you back to another quick tie. We want to thank Rocky Mountain Fly Shop for sponsoring this quick tie for you guys today. If you are tuning in today, we are going to be going through this awesome fly here, the Purple Haze. If this is your first time joining us, please drop a comment. Let us know you are here, or if you're just watching this quick tie as a regular thing, we would love to hear from you. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this video. Click that little bell to let you know basically every week once we have a new fly coming out. I'm going to be tying out of my Season 5 kit. If you do not already have one of these, you can head on over to our website and grab one at www.flyfishingbover.com/TNLS5. We are on episode 13 of Season 5, in which we are going to be pulling this kit from. So let's head on over to the vise and let's get started. So we're going to be tying this on a Dairiki number 305 in size 14 today. That's what the fly is going to hopefully look like when we're done. We'll drop that out. We'll go ahead and get our other hook placed in the vise. This is a pretty common size for this pattern specifically, and pretty good overall. Try to get that nice and level. If you're anything like me, it's got to be just about perfect. There you go. I'm going to be tying with some UTC 70 in black today for this fly. So let's go ahead, get our thread started just behind the eye of the hook, leaving just a little bit of space. I'll go here. I'm going to trim out that tag end. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my tail tied in, and today we're going to be using some pheasant tail fibers as our tail. So you got a bunch of clumps like this in your kit, so let's just go ahead and making sure the tips are even in the back, we're going to get this tied in. So when I'm measuring a tail, I want it to be about 3/4 of the overall hook shank and length out the back of the fly. So if I want to measure that, I am going to tie it in here in the middle first. But I'm going to measure it so that when it hangs off the back, I've got about that 3/4 length off the back of the fly. Mayflies do have that longer tail section, so we're going to leave it a little bit longer. So get that attached right on top of the hook shank, and then I'm just going to be lifting up on those fibers and taking some thread wraps back and down. We do not want to push these tail fibers down over the edge of the hook shank, so we're going to stop right up on top, so they should go straight off the back of the fly. Then I'll come in here and trim out that butt section. Now, once we've got that tail in, the next thing we're going to focus on is getting our post material tied in and prepared for this fly. So what we're going to be using is some parapost material, this white stuff here, some Zelon or Antron works just as well. Some guys even do it with cider foam, but we're going to stick with this kind of more traditional material here today. So it kind of comes in these strands. You can choose how much you want to put in. I actually like to end up doubling this over by the time I'm done. I like a little bit broader post. It's more visible, and it gives me a little bit more to wrap around when I'm prepping the rest of the post. So I'm going to leave a little chunk hanging off the back here because I'm gonna actually cut this off at an angle. But first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here right up on top of the hook shank, and now if you see where I've tied this in, take a couple wraps and I'll make sure I pull this right up on top. I want to tie it about 1/4 of the hook shank back, maybe 1/3 of the way back. Okay. So I need to have a little bit of space up there by the eye, but once you see how I trim this out, I'm going to be creating a little bit more space for myself here anyways. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to angle my scissors, so I'm actually cutting a bit of a taper into that thing there. You can see how that material is left with a little bit of a taper on it. Now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to secure that butt section down, kind of creating a bit of a ramp down to the back portion of the fly. So this is going to be more of the thorax up here, so we're okay with it having a little bit of a bump, but that's kind of how we prep it. I'll bring my thread back forward. I'm going to bring it in front, take a couple thread wraps, and now I'm going to double this over, like so, okay? And I'm going to lay it back down. I'm going to spin my thread towards my fingers. It'll cause it to jump rearward and grab. I'll lift that up, and it forces that thread wrap back a little further up against the other one. Take a few thread wraps before I do the same thing on this side at a bit of an angle, trim that out, and I'm going to secure those butts down as well. So now we should have built up a bit of a thorax with both ends of that parapost, which you can see there's a little bit of a bump there, but the rest of the body should taper quite nicely. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start holding up here. I'm going to start taking thread wraps around and around and around this post. This is what's going to create some strength in it that I'm then going to be able to put my hackle up against in the end here. So I'm just going to continue taking thread wraps. Start low. You're going to do a whole bunch of them. It's going to start to build a little bit of thickness over top of that parapost material. And once I start gaining a little bit of strength, and you can tell because it gets a little stiffer, then you can start working your way up a little bit. It's a really hard thing to judge. How high do I need to go up on this material? Well, you need enough for 2 different hackle to get tied in and to come back down the fly. So it's really a sight thing. When I look at it and I'm done, I try to compare from the hook eye to the post. I try to compare that as the same height I'm going to use from the hook up the parapost. So I want that to almost look like a perfect right angle there and have the same length from the eye to the post as from the post to the top of the post. So somewhere in that region is kind of where we're going to finish it off. Take a few more thread wraps up the top. Often we forget to put additional ones on the top side and it's a little weaker up there. So I want to make sure that that's pointing perfectly straight up right there. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to prep my hackle. So you got 2 different hackles in your kit. You're going to have a grizzly barred one. You're going to have a brown one. Okay, so we're going to tie, this pattern calls for 1 of each. So I'm going to tie in first my grizzly. Okay, now how I'm going to do that is on the near side of the fly with the underside of the feather facing me. I'm going to leave a little space so that I can wrap up over top of the stem, because you can see how I cleared the stem off. So I'm going to leave a little bit up like this. So I'll hold it up the side so you can see. I'm going to attach that stem right there. And before I pull it up and wrap around it, I'm going to go ahead and grab my other stem and do the exact same thing. Place it there, leaving that little bit of space. And now right away, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these 2 together. I'm going to lift them straight up. And I'm going to start taking a couple thread wraps, just like I had just done, right around the post, securing the stems of both of those feathers to the post I've already created. Okay, all the way up to the top, because these wrap from the top down. So I want to make sure I got a good amount of thread wraps up there, securing that feather, then bringing it back down. Now I can come in here and trim out the stems. Those should be good and secure, like so. So I'm going to have both of these just hanging out up the top of the fly. Okay, now for the body material, what we gave you guys in your kit, because it kind of, the original pattern's tied with more of a floss material. It's actually not tied with dubbing. So we actually gave you this clump of yarn. Now in this yarn, you can tell that there is multiple pieces. It's like a rope. So you can start to separate it. So you can see there's multiple pieces that come out of there. I want you to split it in half. There should be 4 strands in there. Let's go down to 2. Okay, so I got 2 strands like this. We want to thin out the body a little bit. And this is what's going to help us do it. I'm going to cut this off so it's square. And then I'm going to tie this in right next to that post. And then I'm going to do some palmering with it. I'm going to pull that down so I'm not leaving too much material out. And I'm going to secure this to the top of the hook shank all the way down to where I left my tail, making sure I don't get caught on that tail. And then once I'm here, it's important that I take my thread up, over, and lay it so it's actually connected to the post right now, but on the far side of the fly, just hanging there. Okay, and I'm going to wrap all around it, and I'm actually going to secure this material off to the post as well. So then I'm just going to start palmering this forward. Just nice touching wraps. We don't need to create a ton of bulk in here. We're more or less just covering up all that thread we have put down, and that natural taper we've built into the thorax portion of this fly should build up for us nicely. So once I get to that post, I'm going to cross underneath my thread. I like to, when I'm right here, just continue forward. I'm going to go all the way to the eye of the hook, and then I'm going to come back over, work myself back up to that post, and make sure I've got good coverage right at the post. So you can see, got good coverage, all my thread is covered. And now remember, my thread was hanging already off the post. So I'm going to lift this up. I'm just going to take a couple thread wraps right there, securing that material off to the post. Now I'll come in and I'll trim it out, making very sure I don't hit any of my hackle. And now I've got a good base here for me to work my hackle back down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to my post here. Put a few more thread wraps, making sure that's good and secure. Leaving it on the post still right at the bottom. Now I'm going to take my hook, because it's a little bit easier here to work with this, if I take my hook and flip it so that the eye is pointed down. And now you can see that my bobbin is actually hanging off. Hopefully you guys can still see this. Perfect. You can see my bobbin is hanging off the post itself. So now I'm going to start by taking my brown hackle, and I'm going to wrap it first. I'm going to do 3-4 turns. I'm just going to slowly kind of work my way down that post, and then I'm going to come and do the exact same thing with my grizzly one. So we got kind of double the hackle, but it gives 2 different colors to it, which is kind of cool. Make sure I've got a thread wrap now on each side of that hackle so it doesn't come out. I'm gonna leave that sitting right there, okay? Now I'm gonna grab my second hackle, my grizzly hackle, and I'm gonna do the exact same thing. And I'm gonna weave it through the hackle that's already been in there. We'll do kind of the same thing, 3-4 turns, finishing with this one right there, covering up kind of our work. And then I'm just gonna slide, try not to trap too many of those fibers. I wanna get that nice and locked in place. Okay, so now I've got both of those hanging off the top. The hackle came through nicely. It looks quite full. It looks in good order. So before I do even cut out those hackle feathers, I'm gonna come in with my whip finish. Now, I know it seems kind of crazy, but we're gonna whip finish this right on the post. This actually secures this in a really good way, and it causes us to not have to mess with that body by bringing the thread back through any of that that yarn we put in. So I'm gonna whip finish it just like I would as if it was at the front of the hook. I'm just whip finishing it right on the post itself. Just like so. And now I'm gonna come in as carefully as possible. I'm gonna trim out both my thread and both of these hackle feathers. I'm gonna flip this back up so it's a little easier to see. And I'm gonna come in here and trim out both of those hackles. Set them aside. You should have enough there to get a couple more flies for sure out of them. And then you can do a little cleanup. So you can look around it if you have any, if you trapped any of that hackle kind of down and it's coming down over the fly itself, we want to clean those out because the reality is this hackle is designed to hold this fly just on the surface. It's like fishing it like it's in a merger. So as long as we got all that cleared out, we're happy with it. Let's come in. I'm going to trim off this post, giving a generous amount up top. You can decide how tall you want it. I want it to come out just the top a little way so I can see, hopefully be able to see that in the water. This part is just for you to see, so however you want to do it. I am going to come in here and touch just a tiny bit of resin right where I whip finished on this. So I'm going to use a little bit of Solar Res Bone Dry. Any resin here is going to be good, something that soaks in. You don't want to use any UV resin that's thick. It'll kind of bulk up this fly more than we want it to. Come in here and cure this. Flip it back up. Hopefully you can see that tail in there as well. And there you have it, fellas. That is the Purple Haze. I promise you this is one of our favorite flies here at Fly Fishing Board River Outfitters. You do not want to have a day on the river without any of these in your box. Okay guys, it's been Tim Hepworth here with Fly Fishing Board River Outfitters and Thursday Night Live Fly Tying, and I want to thank you for joining us for this quick tie. Also want to thank Rocky Mountain Fly Shop for sponsoring it. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this video, and we'll hit you up next week with another fly.